first looked at it, I didn't know whether to pick it up or not. I wasn't sure it was readable. But it reminded me, I preached for 4 days in a town in Illinois called Oblong. And they were still laughing about a society page announcement that said, normal boy marries oblong girl. I looked to see if 2 of my favorite South Georgia names were in there, and they weren't. There's a little town called Hope You Like It, and if you blink, you miss it. And then there's that famous Horse Stomp, and I tried to figure out that name, but apparently there were a lot of mosquitoes, and the horses who were tied up for church did a lot of stomping during the service, so Horse Stomp. And I mean, we could go on with this, couldn't we? This is All Saints Day. Halloween began as Hallows Eve, and they celebrated in the church the lives of the saints who'd gone before and who now made up this great company of witnesses. They used costumes for the saints, and then we've adopted that and forgotten all about the saints, haven't we? So I thought I'd do 2 or 3 things this morning. We just heard 12 names. That's a little startling, isn't it? It reminds us of our mortality. I'll be doing a service this afternoon at Ashwood Square, where I live. And we've been open just over a year, and we will remember 7 names from this facility this afternoon. You've all got your memories, haven't you? A spouse or a child or a parent. And I want to indulge for a moment and share my memories of some special people in my life. I think of my mom and my dad. My dad was a fascinating character. He grew up so far in the mountains that to go to the mountain mission school, he rode a horse 16 miles. And I never had enough sense to ask him what became of the horse. You know, did he keep it there so he could ride home at Christmas? Did he have somebody go with him to bring it back? I don't know. And they slept in tents through the winter. And as Providence would have it, one of his teachers was the older sister of the woman he was to later marry. And she saw his tent on fire and rescued him, like Wesley, a brand plucked from the burning. My dad taught himself to play the trumpet, taught himself to play the fiddle, and went on to finish seminary and was a magnificent preacher and a great pastor. He loved people and they loved him. And I'd like to think that I learned a few things from my dad. He had a pretty wicked sense of humor. He was dedicated to keeping me humble. And he said the reason I grew so tall, I had no weight between my ears. So he almost lost his life when he suggested to Mother that they needed to have another wedding ceremony. And she thought that was sweet, you know, the renewal of vows, till he added, "There's 80 pounds of you I never married." And then there's my mother. You know, she had to be a saint. My dad. She grew up in a family of 8 siblings, a wonderful family. She got her degree from UT and her master's from UT and was a wonderful teacher and musician. But a marvelous homemaker. She insisted that anybody who popped into our home ate before they left. And they, in later years, kept 2 freezers full of vegetables. My dad loved to garden. and it was a real treat to go home. After retirement, my dad never made a very large salary as a pastor. After retirement, they began to raise money for missions. And they raised over $1 million for missions, and a third of that is still in the Holston Foundation. And every year, several $1,000s goes into some mission project from the principal and interest of that fund called the Looney Foundation. They collected tin cans. Their yard looked like a junk heap. My dad buried cats and dogs for a fee. They canned fruits and vegetables and so on. And right after I was elected bishop, I went home for Christmas. And Dad said, "Boy, you may be the bishop in South Georgia, but when you come home, you're my boy and you'll do as I say." And I said, "Yes, sir, what am I to do?" Well, his idea was for me to take a garbage bag and pick up tin cans in the ditches around Emory, Virginia. I wrote that story up when I got back to Georgia. I thought they'd appreciate the fact that somebody was keeping their bishop straight. And a little church with 40 members raised $1,600 for the children's home, collecting aluminum cans. So, I miss my folks, but I sure am grateful that I was so blessed. And I hope you have the same kind of memories. Then I can tell you about David, our son, who died at 45. He was a chef. Ended up, he worked in Knoxville at the Copper Cellar and Calhoun's and a few other places. Then he went to Hilton Head. And David was so generous, he never had any money for himself. If a $5 gift was appropriate, he'd give a $25 gift. And he used to embarrass us at Christmas. We knew how little he had, but he always outdid himself in his generosity. He saw his work as a vocation. He was an artist in the kitchen. One time he agreed to fix a meat main dish for the big choir at First Methodist. And I said, "Well, you fix it and I'll pay for it." Well, he got a pork loin on sale, $2 off a pound, and he got this huge thing for $14. And I thought, man, I have come out well. Well, the spices he got to go with it cost me $22. You know what I mean when I talk about an artist. And then I remember Carolyn. She's been gone 10 years. She was a radiant Christian, a loving person for everybody, and a magnificent musician. And obviously I miss her. But I miss her with gratitude because my life was enriched and blessed by her spirit and her wonderful talents. I do miss somebody to say when I get ready to go out, "So are you going to wear that?" And I'd say, "Well, yes, I'd planned to, but I guess there's a problem." And then she would explain the problem. And I never remember to look to see if I've got lint or whatever to dust off, and I miss that care and that keeping me properly attired and groomed for going out. So I hope you've got some good memories today. As we hear the names in the worship service, there'll be more memories and so forth. So this is a day to remember and be thankful. It's also a day to think about the meaning of the next life. And I want to read one of my favorite passages. It's a difficult passage, and I'm going to read a good bit of it. So I hope you will listen. This is 1 Corinthians, the 15th chapter. Some will ask, how are the dead raised? With what kind of body do they come? Fool, what you sow does not come to life unless it dies. And as for what you sow, you do not sow the body that is to be, but a bare seed, perhaps of wheat or of some other grain. But God gives it a body as he has chosen, and to each kind of seed its own body. We'll come back to the rest of this in a moment, but I want to think about that. This old preacher got up and announced to his congregation, he said, I am about to explain the inexplainable. I am going to unscrew the inscrutable. And I will explain all mysteries. Well, that's what we're about to do together this morning. This day we're going to explain the inexplainable and unscrew the inscrutable. What's it going to be like? I hope some of you are thinking about that, because we're getting close, you know. Let me ask a stupid question this morning. How many of you expect to die? Well, if you don't, you're kidding yourself. You know, but do you think about it? Or do you just avoid it like the plague? Do you talk with your children? It's not easy. They're embarrassed. They change the subject. And your friends say, oh, you'll probably outlive me, when you know that's not true. Do we think about it? I'm an old farm boy, and I love to plant and cultivate and harvest corn. Have any of you eaten any little candy corn during the season? Think about it. One little grain of corn placed in the earth, buried, cared for, and in time a little green shoot. Then a huge stalk. And on that stalk, probably 2 ears of corn. Have you ever counted the ears of corn, the kernels on an ear of corn? I think it's something like 160 on the one I counted. So you double that, and that's one little kernel of corn produces this huge stalk, and 300, if it's 2 ears, over 300 kernels. What might God do with and through your death? I've been reading some interesting articles. I like to keep up with what's going on. You know, I hope you haven't died mentally. And I hope you read facts and not fantasy. And it's amazing to realize what's embedded in us. I just read, I don't remember which magazine. One of my favorites is Smithsonian, and others The Atlantic, and others Saturday Evening Post. Any of you still read that one? There's one article in there about how many late bloomers there are. Remember somebody who just suddenly becomes an artist, somebody who through a severe accident suddenly unleashes incredible mathematical ability, or can sing or play the piano when they have no musical ability. And they've tried to figure that out. What happens here? And a part of it is that these traumatic injuries release something that's been blocked in the brain. We use only a small portion of what God's given us. We'll multiply that and imagine what's going to be unleashed when we are liberated through death into life eternal. We will share not only the presence of God, but we'll share the likeness of God, the presence of God. And I like to think about that. One of my special joys is to try to write down inspiration for a sermon or for an article. And you see so clearly what you want to say, but when you start putting it down, it never is quite what you saw, is it? You can't quite express what you envision. Wouldn't it be great to be able to express what we envision? How many of you like to sing? How many of you are good at it? Well, suppose that ability is unleashed. I don't know what heaven's going to be like exactly, but I know one thing, it's going to be filled with glorious music. And there's some wonderful passages that talk about the saints singing the praise of God around the throne. I envision a lot of venues. Over here's a Norman Tabernacle Choir. Over here is the New York Philharmonic, or the London Philharmonic, or the Amsterdam Philharmonic. And over here is the best kind of country music. Somebody done somebody wrong song. Bluegrass. Now for some of you, this will be the wrong location, but I see a vast bagpipe band. My wife used to say, one number is enough. I could listen all night. Full of joy, full of wonderful expressions. Can you remember a vivid experience you had of the presence and reality of God? You remember the unspeakable joy in it? You remember how you just wanted to embrace the world? First John said, if you claim to love people and don't love people, you can't love God. Well, you're a liar if you claim to love God. You don't love people. There's some people I need help with. And in those high moments, I can even embrace them. You notice that? Several years ago, I was interviewed, Chris, when I was at Muncie. And this young reporter wanted to talk to me about the programs at Muncie. It was a community church, ministered as this church does to community. And one of her questions to me was, what's your definition of heaven? Well, I don't know what that had to do with Muncie Memorial. And in describing the indescribable, I said, well, among other things, it's the near, N-E-A-R, presence of God. We don't see God from afar, as Paul said. We see through a glass dimly, then we'll see face to face. We know in part, then we'll fully know as we are known. Well, when the young lady wrote up the article, she said that heaven was the mere presence of God. As if, that's no big deal. It's the mere presence of God. Well, I was embarrassed to go to church Sunday. This appeared Sunday morning. And she did a few other interesting things. She asked me what my greatest strength was. Well, I thought I was going to talk about Muncie Memorial. And I said, well, I'm better than an average preacher. And the article said that I was better than the average preacher. Well, that's not what I said at all, but that's the way it came out. You have to learn to be careful and, if possible, ask to see what's been said about your interview. But there's nothing mere about the near presence of God, is it? it would transform all of our life. A month ago, I was back in Dane County to preach at Trenton. I started off at Rising Fund. I led the singing for a revival in Trenton. And one night, there was this profound sense of the presence and reality of God. And at the end of the service, my good friend Lee announced that because of this wonderful sense of God's presence, there wouldn't be an invitation hymn. Instead, we would just remain seated and bow in prayer. And then he said to the pianist and said, while we pray, I want you to play hymn number 121 silently. The pianist was the mayor's wife, a very proper lady. And she opened her hymnal and got her hands up. I'm unfortunately not praying, I'm watching this drama. And she says, silent. So she puts her hands down. And we United Methodists are not used to silence, so in a minute she got her hands up again, started to play. Silent. Put them down. And finally she got her hands up, and you could see maybe he meant softly. So she began to play very softly while we enjoyed this wonderful sense of the nearness of God. You remember what it was like in one of those experiences? I remember once on a fall day, I just broke out into laughter, remembering the goodness of God, seeing the beauty of nature. And it was a holy laugh. And it just seemed to cleanse my whole being. I remember another time when I sensed God's direction in an unusual way. I wept, but it was not weeping of sorrow. It was weeping of an unspeakable joy. And so I wonder, with these little foretastes, if I can even imagine what it's going to be like on the other side. Jesus said, I go to prepare a place for you. I don't think Jesus would prepare a shoddy place. I don't think Jesus would prepare an empty place. There's an old doctor meeting with a patient who was dying. The patient knew he was a man of faith, and he said, Doc, what's it going to be like? Well, what do you say? And about that time, there was a scratch on the door. This was a rural hospital. And this was the old dog of the doctor. And the doctor said, oh, really? I don't know. But he said, do you hear that scratch? He said, that's my dog. He has no idea what's behind that door. He's never seen instruments for surgery. He's never seen all these medicines we use. But he wants in because his master's there. And he said, I think that's the way it is in death. I don't know what's there, but I want in because my master's there. Isn't that a beautiful picture? The near presence of God. Well, Paul goes on to try to describe it, and let's read it. Not all flesh is alike, but there is one flesh for human beings, another for animals, another for birds, and another for fish. There are both heavenly bodies and earthly bodies, but the glory of the heavenly is one thing, and that of the earthly is another. There is one glory of the sun, another glory for the moon, another glory for the stars. Indeed, star differ from star in glory. So it is with the resurrection of the dead. What is sown is perishable. What is raised is imperishable. It is sown in dishonor. It is raised in glory. It is sown in weakness. It is raised in power. It is sown a physical body. It is raised a spiritual body. If there is a physical body, there is a spiritual body. And then he goes on to say that in the first Adam, we all died. In his sin, we had the tendency to sinning. But in the one man, Christ, we are given a new life. Just as we have borne the image of the man of dust, we will also bear the image of the man of heaven. I'll tell you a mystery. We will not all die, but we will all be changed. This perishable body must put on imperishability. This mortal body must put on immortality. When this perishable body puts on imperishability, and this mortal body puts on immortality, then the saying that is written will be fulfilled. Death has been swallowed up in victory. Where, O death, is your victory? Where, O death, is your sting? The sting of death is sin, and the power of sin is the law. But thanks be to God, who gives us the victory through our Lord Jesus Christ. That's describing the indescribable, isn't it? It's not a very pleasant thought, but I'm perishing. I'm getting old. Sometimes we laugh at Ashwood. We always have lots of fresh fruit out. And sometimes the bananas look older than the clams. And other times they're as green as a gourd. And they remind you that old saying, at our age, don't ever buy green bananas, because you may not see them ripen. We're perishing. But we're moving toward imperishability. We dishonor ourselves. We say things we didn't mean to say. We get wrapped up in ourselves. We're insensitive to people who are hurting. We believe what we want to believe. But we're going to be raised to glory, where we will not do what embarrasses us or shames us, but where we will honor God and give glory to God. And we're getting weak. I used to bounce up and run up to the platform, and now I waddle up here and grab hold of a rail, and so forth. I still try to work out. I think that's important for all of us. But I'd love to be able to run again, I'd love to be able to shoot hook shots again. I'd love to be able to swing a bat again. I'm weak in a lot of ways. And sometimes, have you noticed that the older you get, the lower chairs are? Yeah. I mentioned that Carolyn was a gifted musician. She played the piano and taught piano. And I loved to sing when she accompanied. She just had a good touch. And one of the things I looked forward to in retirement was to stretch out on the couch and be lulled to sleep with Carolyn playing the piano. And then she had a stroke and lost the use of her right hand. And I bought her a boom box, a piano with all the gadgets and everything. I figured that she would enjoy playing with one hand with a symphony behind her and all that. Never caught on. She needed both hands. Well, she's got both hands now. And I can just see her playing in a grand group of pianists on the stage somewhere in glory. And I can't sing like I used to. I'm gravelly now, and my whole high tones are gone. I remember one day I was studying voice with Chick Davis at Emory Henry. This was well after I'd graduated. I went back to do that. And he kept trying to help me here, you know. We tend to frequently,
You notice people, when they get to speak, they get in their high note, you know, and so forth, and they sound strange and almost mad sometimes.
what they need to do is to get in their low range, their normal range, and so forth. Well, one day, he'd been working with me. He said, you know, Dick, all your life you have closed off because of this gap in your teeth. And you don't want to do it closer. So he kept trying to get me to open up and let the sound come over, you know, and so forth. Well, one day it happened. I mean, in the minute it happened, I knew it was right. I mean, here was a sound, unencumbered. And Chick got all excited. That's it, that's it. And I started to say, I know it, and I can sense it. Wouldn't it be great when we can stop, you know, and just be what God intended us to be? And that's a part of the glory. Some of us, I won't call any names, but some of us may have to do a bypass for a few years to get squared away so we can inhabit eternity. But I'm not really proposing that. I'm just having fun. But won't it be great to just be ourselves, the self God meant to be, and our better selves? I always am inspired on All Saints' Day. Some places every name when it's read, there's a candle lit and a bell rung. And I can remember some special people who've enriched my life. There's Miss Eileen, who when she prayed, you almost opened your eyes to see God standing before her. I can see that man who dedicated his life to caring for shut-ins. I can see those people who are always an encouragement. And I hope you can have your day filled with gratitude today as you remember the saints who've gone before, some very close. You know, it's interesting, out at Ashwood, they give us a printout every month and it shows who's there and their phone number and so forth. And I counted up the other day, and it's not a completely accurate count, I'm sure, because I'm not sure about every first name. There are 52 single women, 12 single men, and 28 couples. And that's changed in the last week with new folks coming. But don't know what it's going to be like, but I see some faces I can't wait to see on the other side. We're going to have a new body, but we'll know each other. And we'll celebrate together the life we shared and the life we will now share in a new dimension. Well, thank you for listening, and thank you for remembering. And if you still need God's help in grief, just know that the Good Shepherd is there not only to care, but to comfort. And in our darkest moments, the Good Shepherd may be nearest, even when we don't recognize it. God bless you. Go in peace, and may the God of peace go